Mathieu from Ludovox.fr, and we are in Cannes with the team behind Micro Macro Crime City. Hello.
Hello.
So you're Tobias, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And what did you do on the game?
Yeah, I'm part of this group. We are 3 designers, illustrators, and game designers. And my part was maybe more in the graphic design part in the first game, and we developed more like changing or taking over also the other parts so that we are more effective in the other parts after the first one.
So Daniel, hello, and what can you say about your contribution to the game? What did you do and how did that happen?
Yeah, like Tobias, my part was in the first game more the game development and some of the assets for the city, like cars or trees or something like that. And on the second game, we all 3 made also the cases, and so it getting more and more fitting together that everybody does in some kind everything. Yeah.
And Johannes, hello. Apparently you're the artist, right?
So it's a teamwork. You can imagine that, I mean, the city, that's a whole really big piece of stuff. So it's teamwork. There's so many stuff, we all had to work on this.
I think what's important to think about is that as we started to think about making something like this ISO design, we worked in different, like Yo-Yo draw a lot of figures to find out how the illustration style would be the best. And Daniel was like focused on how we can make the grid like working, and also like how we can make the assets and how to make the architecture. So this was really like, it was not the work of one illustration. So it was really like developing this kind of character. So this was like a lot of work, trying out, discuss, change something, discuss it again. And this was a process which took about
3 or 4 years. It really was a process. We all were working on this.
So, how did you have the idea of the game? Was it something that you wanted to do? Kind of a Where is Waldo investigation game? Was it the start, or did you have another idea?
Not at all. It was the other way around. We were just starting with some idea. It was more technical, like we had the idea of having very, very small details in a printed media. And in the beginning, the initial idea was to have a magnifying glass to find very, very small details, very tiny details that you can't see even with your eyes without the magnifier. And then we thought about how to make a game out of it. And then we discovered that it's going to be a huge thing with many details. And then it's got to be some kind of Finding Waldo stuff. But that was not the initial idea, no?
Yeah, we had some tests with a smartphone for zooming in. For example, we had €20 and we zoomed in, and we saw, well, that's so marvelous. You can read something in the shadows there you didn't see before. And then we had we looked at different techniques of how to print things, and there were also prints of cities made with copper. And they were very detailed, and so it went on, and then the first city was built with a small case inside, and Yo-Yo tested it with some friends, and they were blown away, and so it began with all the testing.
So, what is the process to create a case? Do you think about the idea of the case, then you make it, or do you try to level design it? How do you imbricate it, weave it with the other cases? How does that happen?
Yeah, I think there are different techniques to make a case. On the one hand, you can have a story, like I want to do something with the bank robbery, and then you think about what to do to tell the story. On the other side, you can make a mechanic. I want to hide something and show it again, or do something with a mask, and then think about what story could fit to this. So there are different ways to make a story, I would say.
And it's very tight connected to the illustration. In most cases, you don't have you cannot write a story and then do the illustrations. You have to think about what kind of picture puzzles could be in that story. Does it work? Think about it, develop it, then do some sketches, and then you see if it works or not. And so it's very, very tightly connected, doing illustrations and stories.
It's much of try and error. You have to test much because you draw something and you think people see what you want to draw, but they don't see it. They have a whole other interpretation of what you did, and so you have to test, try and error. What do the people say to it, and do they understand what you want to show there?
We have a lot of different ideas, and also like sketchbooks where all the ideas are in, and then we discuss what kind of idea may you have, would it come together, and then we really try to bring it in the city. And from the first start to bring out the ground structure of the city, it takes a lot of rearrangement. Like we see, okay, this will not fit, this will not work. So we have to rebuild the city. I don't know how many times during the process to come to the final end. Yeah, so it's not really like we make this city and then we put it in. We really have to build up. We have to trash down buildings to bring other stuff up to make it really work. And it's really like an intense work for several months in the year, where we really come together with first ideas, then trying to bring them together, and even to find how much, like for the adults, for the kids, how many violence is in there, and also like other stories like matching in the same topic, so we take it out and may have it in the books for next version or something else. Yeah.
How do you measure difficulty in this game? Because some cases are more difficult than the others. How do you plan that? How do you make a case difficult or make a case simple?
So I would say, first of all, it's testing. So we do a lot of testing with all the cases. We have to, because that's the only way how to make them work. It's almost never the case that you develop some story and then it works immediately. It's always like you need to do a lot of testing. And during testing, you just see how difficult it is, or do I want to have it a little more difficult? Of course, you have some idea, depending on the length of the story and the quality of the puzzles, how difficult it's going to be. But
yeah, for some puzzles, you know, these are not so difficult and these are difficult. For example, if you only have to chase a person through the city, it's not that difficult. Like you have to think about what could this person want to go next. And sometimes, in some cases, the people then are hidden. You cannot see him walking around anymore, and you have to think about where could he be? What is his intention? And I think these are the puzzles with more stars, so the more difficult cases, yeah.
What do you think, when designing the game, you must have like hit some limits? What were the limits of Micro Macro? For example, making the characters too similar, or false leads and red herrings? What are the limits of the game?
There are super many limits because I think, I mean, the first obviously thing is the details, how small, how tiny the characters are. You cannot have details like, I don't know, like a pencil or something. So you're really restricted in what you can show, what you're able to show. And then there are some less obvious limits, like one of the key limits is you only have one scene on one spot, obviously. So you cannot show like chronological actions on the same spot. So if something happens and then happens another thing in a chronological order, then it has to be on different spots. And that creates so many restrictions that
For example, if you have a bank robbery, there cannot be someone who goes there and plans it and come back later to make the bank robbery. That's impossible to show because then he would be shown twice in the same spot. And yeah.
Was the second box, Full House, easier to design than the first because you already had done the first, or was it more difficult because you had done so many things with the first one?
I think some parts were easier because we had like created some ground structure. We knew how things should be, but also if you do a second version of something, you would also you want to do it more like find special things in there, more like strong or more exciting stories. So I think for me, it was like the second one was also very exciting and also like challenging. And even that in the first version, it was really like Yo-Yo was doing the cases. He was doing it. We were like just giving feedback and trying everything out. And in the second, Daniel and me also started to make stories, and this was also challenging for us, even in the work together. But we knew that we have to do it this way because this makes it more like complex, more like a little bit more creative, and also it's possible like to work a little bit faster to bring out also the second one, because it was like for us it was important to get this story like working because in the first version we found out okay, it makes also so much fun for us, we want to do a second version. So yeah.
And the game has had a tremendous success. I mean, you've won the As d'Or here in Cannes last year. Was it did it change a lot of things for you as a team, a designing team?
Yeah, definitely. So we're now. So me, I'm only working on Micro Macro. I don't do other projects. I'm full-time Micro Macro, and you also have some other projects, but still you're getting more and more time on Micro Macro now.
We got an agency, and our co-workers are also already working on Micro Macro because there's so much to do and so many new stories to tell, and it definitely changed the way we live.
So what's the future of Micro Macro?
I think Micro Macro 3 is on the way. So that's really what we are doing now. We just came here to Cannes for a short break, but really we are like working on the third part now. And as you know, we have different parts of the city, and we are the third part now, and maybe fourth. We don't know.
You never know.
We get some new mechanics, also new materials. Maybe we want to try out in our sketchbooks, and we will see how it fits. It's definitely we have to test the things, but there are many things to try out left. Yeah.
Thank you guys, Tobias, Daniel, and Johannes. Thank you very much for being here, for giving us insight on Micro Macro, and let's see you on the Devox.fr. Bye-bye.
Bye.